Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another edition of the Quantum Compass. This is episode number 10. My name is David Farrell. As always, I'm one of your co-hosts, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host, the one and only...
Bella Alvaran. Hi, everybody.
Yay! So we're back in the house, everybody, and doing our fortnightly preview of the upcoming Mayan wave spell. And along with that, we'll be looking at the incredibly powerful astrology that doesn't seem to want to let up right now. And of course, we'll be having a look at a chosen plant for this wave spell and also pulling a card on the deeper meaning of what's going on. So we're going to have a bit of fun, as always, right, Bella? And we are now moving into a different part of the process, I think, having just been through something really, really powerful. And actually just the day before we recorded this, we had the very powerful shifting of Jupiter into Gemini, which is actually going to shape up a lot of what this next wave spell is about too, right, Bella?
Yes, and the full moon in Sagittarius. So a lot of expansion, a lot of energy coming our way. So I'm feeling the expansion energy.
That's true. And we also had that beautiful kind of, we can say, Venusian kiss that Jupiter received as Venus was leaving the sign of Taurus and entering into Gemini. And a big part of this particular wave spell is going to be another one of these powerful kazimis that we've been tracking over the course of this year, with Venus going through her own death and rebirth process. So it's kind of in the air right now, huh? It's like death and rebirth. There's no way around it. And when we're going through a process of change, it's kind of necessary. But we're getting a bit of ahead of ourselves here, I think, Bella. So perhaps let's get into today's look at the Mayan wave spell, which is, I believe, the white wind.
It is the white magnetic wind. But before
Right.
we get there, I'm going to share the moon. And
Yes.
so we have included now the one of the 13 moons, and we shifted the moon. In the last wave spell, we were in a different one, and now we shifted to moon number 12. So we are following this diagram here of 13, and we were here in the moon of liberation, which was number 11, and we moved to the moon, or we are moving into the moon of cooperation, which starts on May 30th, and it goes all the way through June 26th. So it's a completely different energy. It's an energy of collaboration, of community, of circles, of socializing, and seeing who you want to connect to for a higher purpose, of course. And the totem animal is the rabbit. And some of the qualities of the rabbit have to do with fertility. Seen rabbits all around the garden for the last few weeks.
All right.
And it's about being very expressive, sharp intellect, all the qualities of what we're going to see in the astrology. So they all match absolutely perfectly. And attracting people, which is the socializing, being unpredictable and spontaneous is also quality of this totem. Fast reflexes, good coordination, so it's a very quick mind. Highly observational and alert, gentle and nurturing, as well as intelligent and witty, quick to succeed. So lots of fast energy, mental energy, connected to fertility as well. And so it's a good moon to do networking, connections. If you've been doing the work as we've been following the wave spells, who do you want to work with? Have you identified a group, a tribe, a community, an area that you want to be a part of, or even start a new one? So that is the crystal moon of cooperation.
Right. And I think that that's really amazing, Bella. As always, we see the coherency and the correspondences playing themselves out. And we're starting this white wind wave spell with an energy or a moon that's very commensurate with that. But we're also going to be talking a lot about Gemini, and a lot of these energies could also be attributed to both Gemini, but also somewhat to Uranus. And interestingly, on the first day of this wave spell, Mercury conjuncts Uranus, which has got all of those energies there. So we'll get into that a bit later on. But I love the way that these things always seem to match up and give us that reassurance that we're reading the runes or the energy correctly.
Yeah, no, I love the way they correlate. And so the wave spell is called the wave spell of the white wind, which is the glyph here I've highlighted on the right. It's one of the white glyphs. And we know that the red are initiators and the white ones are refiners. So we're going to refine the energy of what we have been doing for a while. And here on the Solkin, we see it here starting with number 222. So again, getting closer and closer to the end of this Solkin, starting with this number all the way down to 234. And here on the right, we can see the glyph. This is closest to the original Mayan glyph. There is a temple as well. We go into that in the course, that is to the god of the wind, which is all to do with talking to the wind, talking to the trees, asking for information. You could talk to other beings that are in different realms, because we are more connected to spirit, and it's a really good wave spell for that kind of connection. So if you are a white wind, or if you're in this wave spell, it's the wave spell of truth. Speaking your truth is very important in this wave spell. And the castle, we mentioned it in the last show, which is an introduction, another layer. We just did this wave spell here in the center. We're going to the second one. And when we finish those 4, then we finish a whole Solkin and then start again here in July. So this is for those that are more advanced or have been doing the Mayan course, or if you're already connected to what is a castle, and if you're tracking what is going on.
Also, though, Bella, just to amplify that point, because I think it's really, really interesting, is that each castle has one red wave spell, one white one, one blue one, and one yellow one. So it forms in itself its own process. Yeah. And the more that we are going to continue looking at all of this in future shows, and with the work that we're doing through the Mayan Time and Magic course and everything else on QPW, we're going to keep seeing this cyclical nature that is coherent no matter how long or short the time space you're looking at it is. And each one can be used either as a 13-day manifestation process, or it can be 4 13-day processes for something much bigger. And I think that that's really, really interesting when we think about maybe mid to long-term projects. We can use the castles to manifest something that might take a couple of months rather than just a couple of weeks. And we're now into this very final castle of the year, which is the green one, which doesn't, of course, fit the red, yellow, blue, or white, because the green is the integration, right? So it's the final kind of aspect of what happens when you've done the full cycle with the other 4 elements, we can say. And
it's
you're
like a transcendence of it all.
Yeah, it's almost a bit like ether or something. If I think of the other ones as being different directions, then the green would almost be the center of ether, of the culmination of the process. So just to add that into people's awareness too, because I think that as we go forward, we're probably going to be talking and working more with castles for the rebuilding of our environment, because we're going to have lots of big projects, I think, as humanity moving forwards to create our new Earth.
Right. And so, as I was saying, the white wind wave spell is the wave spell of truth. It starts here with the white wind, and it has another four in total, 4 of white glyphs. And the qualities connected to these glyph or to this wave spell are communication, all to do with communication, with breath, with throat chakra. The action is communication, the essence is breath, and is the power of spirit. So to speak your truth connected to spirit. And I think it's absolutely amazing how it's matching all of the amount of energy that is now happening in Gemini. We've moved into that energy, and a lot of connections and ideas and possibilities and opinions, I think, are going to be coming our way, and you'll need to be able to discern the truth and speak your truth. So let's go a little bit more into the qualities of the white wind. To use the breath as the fuel of life, invisible force, cosmic energy, and the part of the body that it's connected to this glyph is the respiratory system. And it's funny because the Gemini is also connected to the lungs. So we're all to do with the breath, the spirit, and speaking your truth. The shadow for this glyph is victimhood, projecting and blaming others, to doubt your connection to divinity, to feel separated or isolated, and disconnection from higher self and spirit. So we can see here already what is inviting us to do is reconnect to your higher self. Make sure that you are aligned with your ideas, with clarity, that you're not projecting, and use that reconnection to the divine to be able to communicate and connect to others. Okay. Did you want to comment anything about the white wind wave spell?
I mean, it's going to be woven through all of this episode, as always, Bella. But yeah, I mean, it's interesting to see again how this very much links to the incoming astrology and even to our other project, the navigation guide to quantum consciousness, which we'll talk a little bit about more towards the end, because it's all part of the same energy flow that is going on right now. And it's actually a very, very necessary one for the evolution of the so-called ascension process, or the evolution of humankind and Mother Earth into a more fifth dimensional frequency. But it's a process, and there's a series of steps that have to be undergone. And I think looking at the shadow aspects of the white wind, we see very clearly something that I think is coming up widespread in the collective right now, judging from what I'm hearing from people, and that is a sense of victimhood, where something that is going on for me personally is everybody else's fault. It's nothing to do with me. It's everybody else's fault that I'm in this condition,
No.
whatever is going on.
Yeah.
And I think that that's something that we're going to all have to have a look at moving through the rest of 2024, is not blaming other people for the actions that you chose, but accepting responsibility. So yeah, I think it's interesting that it's already coming up here with this wave spell.
Accepting responsibility and looking at the duality and polarity of things, which is what's coming up in our navigation guide, is absolutely key to understanding the polarity and the world we live in, how it's designed, and how by polarizing our thoughts, our ideas, our world outside, making us choose right or left, black or white, whatever they're making us choose, they're always going to keep us trapped. So it's very important to take responsibility and start integrating that shadow.
I mean, maybe without wanting to make this show political or anything, but we can understand that for many so-called democracies in the Western world, we're often presented with really essentially just two choices, and you're like told to choose this one or that one. And it's like, hey, but that one's bad and that one's worse. So at what point do we, the collective who vote, we still actually condone that by participating in the process, whatever it is, any kind of election. But if we use our gift to speak out and speak our truth and say, I don't like either of these options, I'm going to set up a party of the people and I'm going to create a vibration that's different, and we're going to organize ourselves to create something different. And I think that it's just a very obvious example, because it's coming up in many countries over the next couple of months, that people are going to be faced with these two choices. But that doesn't mean that it has to be the only one, and we can respect other people's choices to choose things. But at the same time, it's like, hey, I've got a gift to be able to speak my own truth and to organize myself in a way within the totality of the system, and say, hey, there's an opportunity here for another possibility or another choice to present itself, right?
Yes, and part of what I want to achieve with this show and with the Mayan course is for people to understand how by following these ideas and systems that they have imposed on us about time, which is the Gregorian calendar, time is money, for example, it already shifts us, like it takes us out of our creative power and our sovereignty. So it's the first idea I want to put across. Whoever is controlling our time and giving us the ideas and thoughts and putting it out there in the collective are the ones that are controlling our reality. It's as simple as that. So this is more of an invitation to take responsibility and start creating the reality you want for yourself and the world you want to see out there.
And, you know, also, I totally agree with that, Bella. And I understand from the perspective of many is that sometimes the alternative to acquiescing to the presented choices is something really, really tough. It could be really, really challenging. I'm not for a minute saying, hey, go out and create a new political system or a party. That's going to be something that you can happen overnight. But if you really are truly unhappy with the choices that are being presented, first of all, don't participate in that system and opt out of that system, or start creating a parallel system with the energy of people around you who are vibrating in the same frequency. It's not the easiest option, but it's still another option. And I think that that's something that we need to remind
I
ourselves.
think, and that is going to happen anyway, because we're moving into the age of Aquarius, and that
Right.
is the way the power is going to go to the people and the groups
Yes.
making their own decisions and their choices. So I do see the world moving into that. It's going to be a transition. Pluto has just entered Aquarius, and it still has to still go back in September and return in November. So there is still a little time to go for the rest of the year. But the humanity has to go to a different way of doing things if we're to go into 5D for sure.
Yeah, and we do have Pluto doing a lot of its stuff right now, and I know many people are being affected either by the conjunctions that Pluto's causing or by the squares that it's causing, and that is also part of the process. You know, Pluto is now retroing back through those first couple of degrees of Aquarius, and will bounce back in very, very briefly into Capricorn, which gave us so many problems over the last, we can say, couple of decades with Pluto and Capricorn, particularly in the last 5 years. But I feel that that's also the collective's opportunity to have one last look at that system before it disappears, and we say, are we done with this? Are we really done with this? Are we ready to let that system and structure go? Yes, we are. Okay, great.
So we've gone into astrology already. Let's finish the Mayan part
Yeah,
first.
sorry, we're jumping ahead,
So these are
everybody.
the reflective questions for the wave spell. Every day, starting on day one, which is the white wind, set your intention. And because it is the white wind, it's a perfect opportunity to have those conversations that you need to have, whether at work or with family, and start making sure that there is a better connection and being able to speak your truth and being authentic, and speaking from your higher self, basically. Good. So now we can go into the astrology.
Sorry, I was jumping the gun there a bit, everybody. But, you know, that's the beautiful thing about what we enjoy from doing the quantum compass, isn't it, Bella, is the fusion of these different seeming modalities, but actually that they fit really well together. And we can use them, as we talk about in our guide to quantum consciousness, as a navigation tool. And that is really what this show is all about. And so, again, I always say that there are many more deep dives on the astrology out there from other folks. But what we do is we like to weave in the main points that are jumping into our awareness that seem to be congruent and coherent with the wave spell we're looking at. So just brought out a few of the key ones that have been marked down for this next 13 days from May the 30th. And so we have a very powerful beginning to this wave spell, actually, Bella, very much in line with what you just said. And then we have Mercury conjuncting with, that should be Uranus in Taurus on Algol, on what is actually a galactic portal. And as you said, kin 222. So when Mercury is conjuncting Uranus, it's going to be on that 24th degree aspect of Taurus, which is where there is the big star Algol, which is, well, it has a bit of a bad reputation for a number of reasons. And if you follow any of the Stellar Nations pathway, you'll know more about that. But generally, most people know Algol as a place that has kind of got a density to it. And so it still feels like we're being asked to look at something, communicate something unexpected, maybe from that density that still needs to be released. And this is going to come up actually with the card that was pulled for this particular wave spell. But it's also a galactic portal, which I think is a really powerful way to start the wave spell, Bella, and that again, it opens us up to the possibility to call forth more ingenuity, more inspiration from the cosmos itself, and say, you know, we can call on that inspiration, that intuition to guide us over the next 13 days, which with Mercury and Uranus is going to be very much about communication, about speed, possibly about unexpected events. And I think that that possibly is what we're looking at anyway over the next, not just this wave spell, but maybe the remainder of this particular castle, I think, as the great transition and the movement from one system to another really starts to take effect, and we get to see it more clearly in our third dimension with some of the things we've just been talking about, that idea of choice and whether we still subscribe to the ideas that we subscribed to before. Do we really believe that we have true democracy in our world? Is this another illusion that we've been given that we believed in? So many of these things are going to come into question, I think, over the next period. We then have on June the 2nd, really is one of the major aspects for this wave spell, which is another Cazimi. This time, sorry, that's on June the 4th. But before that, we have Jupiter forming a trine with Pluto at the first degrees of Aquarius and Gemini. So this is going to give us some nice aspects that we can work with. It's going to be a lot about technological innovations and more about social media and communication devices. So again, we're getting this very, very strong aspect of something new being communicated, something new in our world that we might have to integrate, to absorb, and say, oh my gosh, this is new information. I didn't know this. This is changing my perspective on things. Maybe we can even call forth with the galactic portal at the beginning a new type of social media, a new type of news, maybe one that's not full of illusion and deceit, but maybe one that actually accurately represents more truthful aspects of our reality, or a different perspective, we can say, because truth is very subjective. And also with this particular trine on June the 2nd, we can really enter into more of being a conduit, perhaps for our higher selves. And again, when we enter into that space and we're channeling our higher selves, we want to make sure that the throat chakra is able to harness the information coming and to share it accurately and with the right intonation and the right vibration. So very powerful beginnings to this wave spell. Bella, anything you wish to comment on those before I move on?
No, I definitely want to, when we go into the Venus Cazimi, I do want us to talk more about that and the new moon, definitely.
Yeah,
And
so
anyway, all the energies around Mercury and Gemini, I mean, the polarities are there, communication to resolve conflict. It's definitely seems like key to all of this process.
yeah, so we'll pull up some charts in a minute for the Cazimi and for the new moon, but also just to draw attention to something, just to put it into your awareness, a perhaps more challenging day on the day of transcendence at the end of this on June the 11th, which is Mars squaring Pluto. Those two rulers of the Scorpionic house or sign are going to square off against each other. And this is often a slightly more challenging square. Mars and Pluto can be quite combustible, quite fiery, and also lots of potential disclosure, we could say. So what do you think, Bella, about that?
Do we have it as one of the highlights at the end of
No,
it?
no, it's I just put it in because it's at the end of the wave spell, and I feel like it's going to be the transition point that maybe is kind of activating everything that we're learning through this next 13 days with the communication, with the new information. It's like there's going to be, it feels to me like it's an activation point, a trigger point for something to go, okay, that's enough. I'm kind of tired of putting up with this sort of Plutonian hidden deceits, and I want to take action against it now. So I could see that Mars and Pluto could work a little bit like that with those energies, but we'll see. I think it's an interesting transition point for what comes after this next 13 days.
Okay.
So just again, reiterating the three major astrological transits that we're now going to have a look at in the charts. And we'll just quickly move through the first one, Bella, on May the 30th. I did already talk about it a little bit, but there we go. We can see that Mercury is conjuncting with Uranus in Taurus, and it's on that big star Algol. Now, without getting too much into Algol, it's a big story in and of itself, but we can say that Algol in this moment, from our perspective, represents the last of the inverted energy that is still being cleansed from our world. It's the density, it's the fallen. We can say it's even the energy and action of the fallen gods, those beings that have somehow held sway over our realm here, however we currently perceive this realm, and I think many of us are questioning that at quite a deep level at the moment. And maybe that's part of what's coming up, Bella, with looking at our reality and the structures of our reality. Which ones do we subscribe to? Which ones make sense for us or are coherent for us? And I feel that Mercury conjuncting Uranus on Algol on the beginning of this wave spell about communication, I'm like, this to me feels very, very important. And I think that this conjunction will resonate for quite some time, because with Uranus in the mix, there's always that potentiality of something unpredictable, of an electrical energy, an electrical impulse, we can say, that is going to come through the moniker of Mercury, who wants to communicate something about that. So it seems to me a very, very pertinent and powerful beginning to the White Wind.
Yeah, since Algol has everything to do with abuse of power and cruelty, and where very dark situations happen according to the cosmic history. So it could be that we get some revelations and disclosures, or so we get to see some of what actually has happened behind the curtains, and how the earth has been abused. The resources, maybe all to do with that, and time to do corrections for all of those things.
And just to mind that theme just for a few more seconds, if we look across into Aries, we can see that Mars is actually still pretty much conjuncting Chiron, which is very, very direct on the very last day of this wave spell, so just in a few days' time. But we can see that we kind of have a racked and stacked energy there with both Mars and Eris on top of Chiron at the moment. And Chiron is sat on another powerful star in the more cosmic arrangement, which is Bait and Katos, which is the galactic prison for all of those beings who fell and who don't want to repent or capitulate. So I see a very strong link there between Bait and Katos and Algol and everything that is going on in the world and what is needed or has been needed to be done in order to create a safe environment so that we can move forwards and we can speak our truth without fear of reprisals, intimidation, coercion, or any of those other things that those two kind of more dense stars like Algol and Bait and Katos are forcing people to deal with. But also we can say with that energy of Bait and Katos, the so-called Hall of Mirrors, if we are still finding ourselves stuck in the polarity situation and being in a place of severe judgment or projection, hey, everything that's wrong in my life is your fault because I don't know who else to blame right now, but you're here, so you will do that kind of energy. Or, you know, and then it means that we're not truly in our fifth dimensional, non-dualistic, unconditional love space. And so if we're not able to rise above triggering situations, emotional situations, to that more steady kind of 5D space, and that's where we need to be having a look at ourselves and saying, hey, it's not everybody else's fault that I'm getting triggered. It's to do with me. I'm getting triggered for a reason. So do you have anything to comment about that, Bella? I know we've talked about this a
Yes,
lot
I
recently.
think, yeah, without going too much down the rabbit hole, I'd say that there is a possibility of rounding up of some of the characters that have been abusing the power and control in the planet. And maybe we'll get to see and see some of the news around this. And still we'll need to use our discernment and even our forgiveness and compassion and even integrate lots of those polarities. I think that's going to be the ultimate test. Even when we get to see the perpetrators, it's still about we're all one. We still have to look at it and transcend that. So I think it'll be interesting to when we start seeing the news and the information that comes through.
Yeah, and again, like you say, without delving into the rabbit hole too much, we know that even suggesting these ideas that those beings, those nefarious villains who are the dastardly plotters behind many of the things in our world, they're still part of our collective experiment that we all agreed to be a part of. And so everyone is playing a part somehow in this process. And so I know it can be very triggering for people to have to consider that the people they consider to be the evil villains actually somehow are part of us, and that we have to accept that they agreed to do something in the world that was designed to shift us. And as we go very much deeply into in chapter 2 of the Navigation Guide to Quantum Consciousness, we look at this and how to work with that catalyzing energy of equal and opposite, because it's really, really important. And yeah, we talk about that a lot. So I think that it's a really important motif, and one that is going to challenge, I think, humanity, excuse me, to its core, but is a fundamental part of how we're going to move through into a different space. So that said, that's how we kick off this wave spell, and then just a few days later we have a day that I think many of us are kind of looking forward to, Venus Cazimi, 14 degrees of Gemini. So again, the energy and action is in Gemini, and this of course is one of the rebirth processes that Venus goes through, and on this occasion she's going to be reborn over the course of about we can say, I think about 6 weeks or so, really, into being the evening star sometime late in July. So this is a combustion process with Venus conjoining with the sun, and this is a Venus rebirth. So what do you think about that, Bella? I know that you're a big fan of Venus.
Yes, no, of course. And I feel that this is so coherent with everything that's been going on. So this wave spell of the red moon was all to do with purification and reviewing any karma to do with your lineage, and things pop up. I hope that people comment and share, like, did you actually experience some of those things? Because it definitely came up for me. I know that some things came for you as well. So I think that now that Venus has integrated a lot of the shadow that needed to be observed and accepted, and now she's receiving new light codes, more light through the sun, and her consciousness, her solar consciousness, is going up with new codes and new information to move forward. I think it's absolutely amazing. There is so much coherence in all of these dance of Venus.
It really is. And with this energy of Venus, you know, we're going to probably see the opportunity for shifts in relationships. So it seems like some of us have already got the pre-energy of that, but also a reevaluation of our values and what we perceive to place value on. And of course, Venus really in the astrology is the epitome of beauty and of something desirable. And so, you know, Venus is here to lift us creatively, and of course carries the energy of the goddess. But something I've just noticed with the ring that you put there, of course, is that Sedna has sort of been nosing her way into Gemini over the course of the last few months. She did sort of temporarily retro back into Taurus, but she's essentially at the 0-degree point of Gemini. And I think now looking back on it, the energy of Sedna for me, Bella, is really about letting go of the old paradigm and letting go into something which we can say in the story of Sedna is the abyss of the great sea, of the bottom of the sea. But in doing so, she gets to fully become everything that she is. But all she had to do first was let go of the boat, and she wasn't able to the extent that even her father had to chop the fingers off. So we can understand that story in many different ways, but I think ultimately we have that precipice moment where you have to let go into the vastness of stuff that you don't really think you understand, but somehow when you do, you'll remember something profound. And so I think Sedna gave us that kind of cue before all of this other action, which is now about to kick off. It's like, can you remember who you are? Because if you can, all of what's about to happen next is going to be a lot easier for you, and you're going to be able to work with the energy, maybe rather than working against it. Because again, we have this Gemini energy of equal and opposite polarities, the two, right? You know, there's always the potential of schizophrenia, even of like, I can't make a decision. I'm like this one minute and like that another minute. And it's confusing me. It's confusing people around me.
I think rather than schizophrenia, it's more of a bipolar energy. It's like a yes, no, a plus minus all the time.
Right. And yeah, maybe that's, that is a better way of putting it. But also we can understand that when we watch the goggle box and the narrative, we've got people standing up giving that kind of incoherency in the same speech, in the matter of sentences apart, on the one hand saying we're going to do this, and then completely contradicting themselves and saying the opposite 2 minutes later, which from the point of view of the masses, when we're trying to understand how is our world functioning, it's nonsensical. So again, I feel like we've got this kind of aspect of communication, not making sense, not being coherent, being polarized, trying to cause division. And how much longer are we going to put up with this before we let go of listening to that and subscribing to it? So I see that we've got this incredibly powerful stellium now that is lining up in Gemini, which is, you know, Jupiter is going to be in Gemini for the next year of our lives. So it, to me, suggests that we're going to have a massive and radical reappraisal of how we communicate, how we receive communications.
I see it really, really beautiful, to be honest, more of like how words can be healing, how communication is the answer to integrating polarities and being able to see the other people's point of view without judging it. So you could use your words to create more harmony and communicate what you love, and let the others communicate what they love, and just be in that field of, okay, I can accept that you love something different to what I love, and it's okay.
Yeah, I think that is the higher note of all of this. And thank you for reiterating that, Bella, because we can look at how things currently are and we can say, well, rather than just accept that as it is, how are we going to shift it to a different space? And I kind of feel that this Venus Cazimi here, pretty much slap bang in the middle of Gemini, is giving us that balance point and saying, do you want to communicate from the heart, or do you want to communicate from just the mind and be limited by the monkey mind, rather than communicating through the heart, which allows us access to the higher dimensions? And I think that that's also going to be a big point that we'll see in our society, is who's communicating from which spaces. And even if we find the other person's communication challenging, because both sides might see that as a challenge, we have to accept, you're in a different space to me, and that's okay. I still respect where you're at right now.
I think if I connect it to everything we've been talking about with the Mayan, we come from a moon energy, which was about liberate yourself from anything that doesn't serve you anymore. And now with all of this energy here in Gemini, is like the Mercury there, the lower mind, Jupiter, the higher mind, integrate the two of them and do it with love. Use it for your relationships. Use communication to integrate all of these. And the glyph is the white wind. I mean, it's perfect. The correlation is absolutely perfect.
And also hidden right there, which I mentioned earlier, is the fact that Mercury is conjuncting Jupiter at 2 degrees of Gemini, which actually is also conjuncting Sedna. So again, we've got this big communication potential, expansion of communication. What is the message? Expanding the message in a different way from the heart, maybe through the process of letting go into something different. So it's really powerful. The way
I'll
I
tell
see
you
this,
what
Bella,
is
is
even more amazing, that we are weaving all of these, the quantum compass, and now we're going to go into chapter 2 in the navigation guide, which is all to do with how to deal with those polarities. How do you deal with the challenge of seeing in black and white, and this tension of oppositions that normally create conflict, which is what the whole world experiences to every single level, whether it's with your family, work, countries, you name it. It's always at the root of everything. That is the conflict of division and the illusion of separation, making us believe we're different, we're separate, and we're not same. So obviously, I think there are many tools here that I think are going to be very useful for people as we go into this chapter.
And even from the point of view of astrology, we think of an opposition as a tension point in which if we work with that opposition energy and work with the tension, we can use it to catalyze and create a dynamic kinetic force that allows something else to happen. And if we think about that in our society, what an amazing gift we've been given there. It's like, hey, we can actually use our so-called division or our differences as a way to catalyze energy and revert any density that may be there as a collective. And we can use that latent force that the so-called shadow world provides us to lift us into the light. So we're going to be talking about all of this in some depth in chapter 2, which comes out, of course, on the first day of this wavespell on May the 10th. So definitely please do check that out if you find this material that we share here in Quantum Compass interesting. And I know that living the experience of this navigation guide is very, very powerful for us. And we really hope that all of you who follow this material understand how powerful and potent it is to be present with each day of your life in this way that the Mayan calendar shows us, and actually kind of activates within us, I would say.
Yeah, good. Let's go to the next aspect.
So yeah, the action is still in Gemini, just in case we didn't get the point already. So we have a new moon to work with all of those things that we've just shared. Hopefully by the time we get to this on June the 6th, we've already got a few inclinations of what it's all about. This is day 8, which normally is the day of integration, right, Bella, from the previous wave spell.
Yeah.
So it's also a day that we would be integrating the energies of the red moon. Is there anything you wish to comment about that in terms of the new moon, or any suggestions?
Well, it is just, you can appreciate here the stellium, the amount of energy that is there. So definitely check out where this falls in your chart and what area of your life is getting fully activated by all of these. The moon, the sun, Jupiter, Mercury, and Venus, all of that for sure is making you communicate, expand, and what area is it actually telling you to make a change?
So we actually have 6 major planets,
I
or
would say.
yeah, or objects, because we've got Venus. I mean, it's a new moon that's conjunct with Venus, which is really, really beautiful. And of course, we still have Mercury and Jupiter and Sedna all. So we've got 2 triple conjunctions going on within the sign of Gemini, which is a really, really powerful, I think, initiation point, particularly when we consider the Venus Cazimi is also a sort of another death and rebirth process, perhaps more into the heart and of elevated aspects, the evening star. So as always, I think that we can make powerful prayers on this day. We always put the new moons and the full moons into these wave spells because they're points of initiation or points of culmination. There are points to reflect on what you want to come into your life, or a point of reflection on what is just coming into your life or has just come. So, in the same way that we're working with 13-day lunar cycles in the Mayan calendar, Bella, we're also basically working with 13-day cycles from new moons to full moons, right? And back again. So
yeah, and it's a good moment, not only for the intentions, but to start something that you want to learn, write a book, read a book, enroll in a course, start something like that has to do with your mind. And in this case, it could be even of a higher mind, because as I mentioned before, it looks like the energy is asking us to integrate our higher self, higher mind, and our lower mind, and expand the knowledge, expand our consciousness.
yeah, of course. And we're still somewhat working through the energy in Aries. That kind of redefinition of self is still getting a little bit of a kick from Mars before it leaves. It's kind of its own sign, and Chiron is going to continue to move around that very challenging star of Beta and Catos for a little while longer, which tells me that from the point of view of the collective, there's still some processing, literally, of some of the energies in the world that need to be released or removed, we can say. So I think that's also really positive, and we don't really need to put our attention to that now. I think that that process is already underway, and we just want to make sure that we're not trapped in our own prisons. I think that's really the important point. And if we are feeling that energy of feeling trapped or not able to move, then perhaps it's time to take a different perspective, Bella. Would you have any suggestions on how to do that?
I'd say just stillness, mindfulness, concentrate on what you want from your heart. What do you want to learn? What excites you? What makes you happy? In my case, learning about all the things to me is absolutely fascinating. Curiosity, socializing in this case, socialize with people in the same frequency, with the same interests, and start expanding your ideas and your consciousness through other people as well.
Right, and because it's the white wind, we might also want to join up with a local group that might have a similar interest to us, or maybe we want to be mentally challenged, to be stimulated in a different way that will stimulate us out of our current maybe hamster wheel cycle of thoughts that we're in that we can't seem to break. Sometimes we just need another impetus from somewhere, a different perspective. And if we can just lower our ego, maybe we can say, and allow a different perspective to come in, we might find that we actually go, oh my gosh, that actually makes so much more sense compared to the belief system that I've been running for the last 10, 20 years. And watching some other channels that I like recently, one of them said something really profound and I think important. It's like, hey, it's okay to say that I'm wrong once in a while. Hey, I got that wrong. That decision that I made is like, there are no real mistakes, but maybe there are things that on reflection we might have done or said differently with more information. So we can say in that context, it's okay to be very Gemini, right? And say, well, that was my truth yesterday. And I fully believed that yesterday. But today I have new information from somewhere. So I'm shifting my truth to something slightly different. And that's my prerogative. We've talked about this a lot before, actually, the benefit of that difference of opinion that Gemini can give, which is the freedom to change your opinion and say, okay, now I see this in a different way because I have more information and I have more illumination about myself, about the situation, and it's my right to be able to choose a different trajectory now, right? So otherwise we will continue to be stuck in our old belief systems.
And there is a very high possibility of being bombarded by lots of information and ideas and maybe disclosure and lots of things that could come our way in the next wave spell and for the next few weeks. But here is where we can make our choice, what resonates with you, connect to your higher self, be ready to expand your mind, to change your limiting beliefs, as you were saying, to develop new thinking patterns and new perspectives. So the mind is going to be very active. And remember, we have been creating our reality from our mind. So take back the sovereignty of your mind, of your thoughts, even though lots of information is coming our way. Choose what you want to have in your field, because depending on that, your reality is going to change.
Yes, and also as you say that, my eye is being drawn to the Black Moon Lilith, which is there 15 degrees in retrograde currently in Libra, and that is actually conjunct the South Node and of course thus opposing the North Node. So I'm thinking that this is also part of the wounding of the feminine, Bella, maybe from the past, needing to be let go of now and being transformed into a different kind of energy with that kind of opposition. It's like, are we going to move forwards with these woundings of the past, or are we going to let them go and allow them to heal and say that that victim part of myself, which maybe was justified in some way, it's also no longer serving me to be stuck in that frequency. And, you know, as we've been talking about between ourselves over the last week in preparation for the new chapters, we've been looking at some of these polarities of wounding between masculine and feminine even, and understanding how did they happen, how are they going to get transformed, and are they beneficial anymore? And I think that we can say no, that they're not. They've served a purpose to show us something, as indeed has all wounding that we've experienced, or all trauma. But it's now time to let go and think about a different kind of future where our self is not wounded anymore. We're not carrying, because we all carry masculine and feminine within us, and we've all been males and females in other lives. We all carry some aspect of male wounding and female wounding, and that needs to be resolved now, don't you think, moving forwards?
Yeah, that's part of the polarity and duality that we need to transcend. It's stepping into the other person's shoes, and judgment is only going to bring more of the same. It's just a vicious circle that is just going to continue to create more of the same. So I do think that all of this is inviting us to, with the white wind glyph, which is about breath, take a deep breath, do some breath work, take some time before you respond, because the mind is very quick and maybe you're saying something that is going to make things even more difficult, complicate things. Take some time out and think about what you really want to say, and put acceptance and peace first before being right, because most of the conflicts is about people wanting to be right. But if we think more about, I prefer to be happy and in peace than being right, and I put love, or the love that I have for that person, or the how much this person or relationship matters to me over being right, I think things can be very different.
That's really beautiful, Bella, and thank you for just reiterating that point, because it is about also a choice about how we react to stuff that maybe triggered us before. And it's like, do you have that ability to take a deep breath and take a step back and say, okay, well, maybe a few years ago I would have reacted to this situation like this, but that also didn't work out so well. Yes, I was proven that I was right, but I ended up offside with a bunch of people that I cared about just because I needed to be proven right in a situation. And maybe now is an opportunity to say, hey, with all due love, compassion, and respect, I don't necessarily agree with that perspective, but I'm going to take a bit of time to reflect on it and then come back with something that's more from the heart, that doesn't want to antagonize the situation anymore. And we can let people have their own version of the story without having to prove to them that they got it wrong. I think that that's a big part of the transition that humanity has to go through, Bella, right now, is to start accepting the point of view of others, and not to be allowed to be divided by them, but to respect them and say, hey, you're different from me. I get that. That's okay. I don't necessarily have to hang out with you every day of my life, but I respect your opinion, and it's good to have a difference of opinion. Maybe life would be boring if we didn't, or, if we all had the same opinion, there'd be none of that tension that we need to create. So yeah, maybe with Mars still kind of flying around in Aries and conjuncting Chiron, we don't want to be operating in a very Martian response to stuff, which is like, oh, I'm right because I've got the fire in my belly right now. And that justifies me with righteous indignation to push my point. It's like, well, is that really helpful? Is that going to make you feel any better? And is it going to make anybody else feel any better? And maybe that's where we can start to take a different, less wounded view and response to things.
Good. Right, so I
So,
think that is very much it for the astrology. Did you have any other points about that?
about the astrology, no, but I think this is a good point to share the card that I
Okay, go for
chose,
it.
that I pulled for today's show and for the wave spell. So as always, still reading from this wonderful pack, having a lot of fun with the Enchanted Map Oracle card. I think, can you see that there, Bella?
Yes.
From Colette Baron Reed. Really still getting a lot of value from this and pulling cards on it every day. And I pulled one for this wave spell, which I nearly thought, oh, I don't know if I can share that one. It seems a little ominous, but I think it's actually really, really beautiful. So I'm going to hold it up here. Maybe we can see that this card is called Goblins. So maybe if I just adjust the light, it's not quite so bright. There we go. So I'm going to read what this card is, because it does sound a little tricksy. The goblins are those little monkeys that like to make life difficult for us. But this is what the guide has to say about this card. So I really ask you just to all just take this in the way that I think it's really important to be received. So, goblins. Fear is an illusion. Choose love today. Forgive yourself and others. Goblins are born when you're wounded and something essential is lost in that experience. From that point on, as you forget your wholeness, they remain with you in the shadows. There, they remind you of what brought them into being by mimicking your own voice, tricking you into believing that you're unworthy, victimized, or unlovable. They hold you hostage through low self-worth, self-sabotage, and the feeling that you're lacking what you need. If goblins pay you a visit, know that they represent the shadow of your own self or someone else's, and that they're leading you into a potentially reactive situation. A goblin's card appearance is an opportunity for growth, however, and a signal that you must love yourself. No human is without flaws. The goblin's message is that you must release resentment and negative self-talk. Within you is the spark of the divine. Ask spirit to help heal you. Miracles can and do happen. Let go of the negativity.
Oh wow, so on point.
Isn't
Absolutely
it?
perfect.
I love it.
I mean, is what we need to be reflecting on is the majority. We have so many thoughts. It's like, I don't know how many thousands of thoughts is it that run through our mind every day. And if we knew the power of these thoughts and how they actually will create what happens, many times we're thinking that somebody said that, but it's only our thought. Most of the times things didn't really happen. And the wave spell is about truth. Is it your perspective or is it truth that you're actually looking at? Is it one of your thoughts or is it really happening? And the reality is always going to be different from every point of view and perspective. So even that, what is reality? If not a bunch of thoughts, and everybody's experiencing it in a different way. So the goblins would be all of these negative thoughts that you need to be reviewing on a daily basis and choosing one of a higher note all the time.
Right, and also not to say kick the goblins out with the bathwater. Love the goblins; they're part of you. Acknowledge them and reintegrate them, and invite them to participate with you as you move forwards in a different way. That it's not more goblin, but maybe we can say more hobbit or more elf or something of a different vibration. Because those voices are not really the truth of the situation, but they can lead us to make judgments or decisions about things that maybe are not entirely in accordance or in alignment with our higher selves. So with all of that in mind, we've chosen a plant that is super easy to access, is one that we all know, and of course is the wonderful sage. And do you have anything you wish to say about this plant, Bella, before I get into the details?
I love it because I love the smudging as well. It's one of my favorite when it comes to smudging, and it's so perfect now to clear our energy field, our mind, our mental field as well. So very important at this point, and to be able to speak your truth as well.
Right, so Bella has just also alluded there to the use of smudging, which I've included here as one of the options that we can work with this medicine. So normally in the past, Bella, I used to make tinctures with sage, and I also used to make a throat gargle with it for the winter, for any sort of, as a preventative medicine, often with other things like chamomile and cloves and honey. But we can make a very, very simple throat gargle with some sage and hot water, and we can use that to gargle in the throat to clear the throat of any impurities, toxins at the physical level, which of course will also enable us to release any maybe bad words that are stuck there, things that we want to say that maybe have a lower intonation to them. So definitely recommend making a tea or a tincture. Really, really beautiful to smudge with, of course, in our smudging bowls. You can also make a really beautiful essence to communicate with the power of the plant, which by its own definition is the sage. It's a plant connected to wisdom, which we'll have a look at in a minute. It's also another one of those plants that can be used positively through topical application, either for on the skin as a salve, or maybe we can put it into some sort of shampoo to use on our hair. And of course, sage is a wonderful plant in food. Goes really, really well with butternut squash and blue cheese. But you didn't hear that from me. Sage is a plant that we can cook with a lot, of course, and be added to many things. So that's another great way to get it in to the system. But here we are looking at the magic of sage. And when you were talking about purification, Bella, I know that you like to smudge with white sage, but this is Salvia officinalis. This is the common sage, as we can say. But if you go to any garden center or go online to any nursery or anything, you will find a plethora of different sages. It's probably one of the most variable plants you can find. Each one has its own unique qualities. Here in Mexico, we have a plant that grows wild, which is basically a pineapple sage, which you can use for medicine, for food. And it's got a little hint of pineapple in the leaves, which is really quite nice. But before I go into this, is there anything else you'd like to say about sage from your perspective?
No, carry on.
Okay, so yeah, this is a plant that comes from the Latin word salvus, meaning healed or saved. So this is another one of these really beneficial long-term medicinal plants that's been with humans for a very, very long time. It goes back to the times of the Greeks in the Mediterranean. It is very connected to the throat chakra, and we chose this plant because of that main energy, really, because of the energy of the white wind, of Mercury, of communication, of wanting to make sure that our throat is nice and clear, not just of pathogens, but also anything else that may be coming out in a distorted way. Another plant, of course, that we talk about frequently in this way is yarrow. But we've already worked with yarrow quite a bit on the wave spell, so we wanted to bring in a different plant. And I feel like sage is really important, Bella, because it allows us to speak our truth. It allows us to cleanse and purify the thoughts in our mind, so that what comes out of our throat chakra and out of our mouth is more of that vibration, more cleansed, more purified, maybe of a higher octave. It's also a plant that can help ease grief from the loss of a loved one. And I would suggest that also that might be a plant that can help us ease grief from the loss of a world that is now kind of disappearing away from us. I think that's been something that we haven't talked about as a collective, is the loss of the world that we used to know. And maybe some of us will be happy about that on some levels, and maybe some of us will be a bit sad that things that we used to do frequently are no longer as easy to do, or they don't feel the same anymore. And as a society, many people have been commenting recently that we haven't really been given an opportunity to look at that. So maybe this is a plant that, at least on an individual level, can help us to process any grief. Maybe you have even lost loved ones over the last couple of years, and that also needs to be acknowledged and released. So
I definitely feel very, a resonance with that, allowing the grief process, because it's again connected to the lungs. It's where you store all of that trauma of grief not being dealt with. And we've gone through a huge metamorphosis process. Many people still are going through it. And that is also hard, to be able to let go of your old self, your old world, your old work, or anything that your world used to be. Sometimes having to let go of people that you're not in the same frequency with. We let go of QPH, which is also huge for us. So allow the grief to take place, and then move on to the next stage of freedom and creativity.
And as we release parts of ourselves, maybe even the victim self, we don't want to just banish that part of ourselves and say good riddance. We want to let it go with love and say thank you for allowing me to go on this incredible journey that's got me to this point. But this aspect of myself no longer serves me, so I want to allow it to be let go, but also to be alchemized and catalyzed into a higher form. And as we move forwards, we want all of ourselves to be moving forwards in the same frequency. But that also means having to let go or say goodbye to some aspect of ourselves from the past. So I think that's also a good point there, Bella. We can also say that's connected somewhat to the indigestion of unresolved issues, which maybe if we have undigested emotional issues, that can cause us physical problems. And so I think that as much as sage is a great plant for digesting food, which is why it's been very much included in many recipes as a herb, particularly in the Mediterranean over the last couple of millennia, it's also a plant that at the energetic level will help us digest undigested emotional traumas.
Good.
So yeah, and then of course this is a plant that promotes health and longevity. I think that's something that we can all get on board with. And beautifully, it's also connected to Jupiter and Mercury, which I think is an amazing connection to everything we've been talking about today. And when I was looking into this plant in more detail, I was reminded of that fact, but also that this is a plant that is connected to wisdom. Hence the sage. And I think that we can all start to call on or channel our own higher wisdom, our higher self, the being or the part of us that has more information, our intuition, maybe we can say our future self, who is channeling information to us that is for our own good. And I would love to invite people into the place that I often operate from when things are challenging, which is like, well, I know that my higher self has got my back and is looking out for me for the best outcome in every situation. All I have to do is surrender to that knowledge and say, hey, there is no part of the universe that is out to get me. In fact, quite the opposite. The universe is out to assist me. And my higher self is channeling all of the various energies and forces around me for the best and most appropriate outcome. And I've used that a lot, Bella, in my own healing process with of course the accident I had with my feet. That's very much the place that I came from, and understood that everything had happened for a reason, and a really, really good reason, as I've subsequently been allowed to find out. So we can turn challenges into a benefit, into a blessing, even with the use of wisdom, right? So and then finally, I just put this in because I found it very interesting that Jupiter also contains traces of tin. Sage contains traces of tin, which is connected also as a Jupiterian metal, which is connected to the goddess and abundance. So again, we've got that energy of Venus coming through. So I thought that's a really
and Venus and Jupiter are all about abundance. And if we connect it to Gemini could be abundance through communicating ideas, new video channels, new courses, new things that could be coming our way, or you could start doing yourself.
Right, exactly. So that is our plan for this wave spell. Very, very easy to source. You can get it even from your local supermarket, but really, really beautiful. Even if you don't have a garden, Bella, you can have a little herb box in the window, and sage is one of those plants that's actually pretty easy to grow. So there we go. So to wrap up today's show, what have you got to share with us here?
And this is our new initiative, which is a navigation guide to quantum consciousness, which is a series of 13 chapters. We released chapter 1 already. It's called Aligning Your Compass, and it's to help people in the process of creation and manifestation. And it has been very well received. Now we're going into chapter 2, which will be released on the first day of this wave spell of the white wind. Perfect about communication and polarities and everything else.
Yeah, and what's really, really beautiful too is that chapter 2 is about the catalyzation of opposing forces, which is actually really the creation force. And if we can get on board with that idea, we can propel ourselves into the higher dimensional visionary projects that we want to bring forth into our 3-dimensional world from our higher wisdom self, our 5th dimensional self. So very, very powerful chapter, learning how to deal with the challenge, which of course is normally a day 2 of a wave spell, and how to work with that energy. So we're expanding out with the Jupiterian energy, with Venus, with the goddess, with the communication aspects of the white wind in Gemini, how to basically take our visions to the world and how to catalyze the forces around us. Everything in this environment, this realm, we can say, is designed to be user friendly. I remember hearing that somewhere once before and thinking, well, that's great. It really is user friendly. Even the things that are challenging actually are designed to be user friendly if we have the codes and the wisdom to unlock them. So if we're not sure how to do that, I recommend having a nice cup of sage tea, or making yourself some nice sage and butternut squash soup, something like that, and really calling forth the energy of the sage within you, your inner sage. So yeah, watch out for this. Available to access for just $26 on quantumplanet.world, and of course all of the links for that and other connectable things, including your course, Bella, the Mayan Time and Magic. Would you like to just add something about that too?
No, the course is doing really well. Lots of good feedback. And in the course, as I've mentioned before, we go into the galactic signatures, the Mayan calendars, how to use all of these wave spells for a day-to-day life to change your the idea and the nature of time so that you reclaim time. And by doing so, your reality, and go from time is money to time is art and creation and beauty.
Super powerful course. It can be jumped into at any point, and when worked in with conjunction with quantum compass and indeed the navigation guide, is giving each and every one of you a really powerful set of tools which we live by, right, Bella? We use them every day ourselves, and in the process of doing so, we are creating our own different time-space continuum. We are living day to day in the form of the Mayan time and the Mayan wave spells, and rapidly I'm losing track of the Gregorian calendar, to be honest. The only reason I know certain things is because what's on the television or what's in my Gregorian diary. Otherwise, I'm very much in the energy of the day. And from my perspective, what I'd like to share with people is that the more that we come back to that every day is important, every moment is important, very strong dandelion teachings, as we've shared before, we start to appreciate the essence of time and how we can manage our time and use it in a way for us to be creative and to communicate those creations, and not perhaps be giving it over to something else that feels like we're just marking time or even wasting time. As you love to say, Bella, time is art, right?
Yes, so an amazing wave spell to connect with your higher self, with your higher mind and lower mind integrated, speak your truth, do some breath work, have those conversations that have been difficult to be had before, maybe because there has been conflict or whatever. The energy is very conducive to go into that, and maybe come to a point of balance rather than polarities.
Yeah, good point to finish with. And I'd just like to reiterate that sometimes those conversations that we've been avoiding for a while, there's a reason why we've been avoiding them. Maybe we feel like we're going to get agitated or triggered. But if we come in with some of the pointers that we've shared, a different perspective is that I want to resolve this. speaking from personal experience, often those things that we've been putting off and building up, when we get to a place of resolution, it's like, oh, why didn't I do that before? That feels so much better. Now I feel released from that sort of pressure that was building somewhere in my psyche or my awareness or in my life even. And if we come at things with a point of view, I just want to resolve this. I don't have to prove that I'm right. Maybe I have to take responsibility for some actions in the past, maybe that weren't necessarily things that other people liked. Maybe I just have to front that situation and accept that maybe it wasn't so well received, or maybe somebody did something to me that I didn't like very much. It's okay. I'm going to let it go. It doesn't matter in the great scheme of things, because we're all just sharing an experience here together. And diversity is what makes it interesting. And sometimes in that diversity, we might find that we have differences of opinion, which is actually also really great, Bella, because it's that tension point, right? That it allows us to be creative and to have that spark. And as anyone who's ever been in a good debate will know, it's like sometimes somebody comes up with something that you hadn't considered from the other side of the fence, like, oh, wow, I never thought of that. But you know what? Thank you very much. You've given me a new dynamic now in my own narrative in which to work with that can be beneficial for me and maybe for others too. So I think that respect, self-love, and being in a place of calmness and taking the time to remember to breathe is really, really important, right? So with that in mind, everybody,
communicate from the heart, I think, is what he's inviting us to do. Communicate from the heart and put love first before being right. I think that's very important.
See, a very Venusian conclusion to today's show. So thank you, Bella, for that. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. We hope to see you again in 13 days, if not before, on one of the other projects that we've just been sharing. Really exciting times, I believe, and I know that you do too, Bella, as we move forwards. We got this really, really incredible expansion energy for creation. So let's work with it, everybody. Let's not allow ourselves to be diminished and be small. Let's allow ourselves to be big and expansive, and to work with that energy and see where it takes us all. So we'll see you all again very soon for another edition of the Quantum Compass. Bye for now.
Thank you for watching. Bye.